Before we dive into installation of Network Monitor and troubleshooting and validating services running on your network, I want to talk just a little bit about the lab setup and why it's going to be changing from one lesson to the next. In this lesson, I want to talk just a little bit about some corporate scenarios, my lab setup, both hardware and software, and then what my lab goals are for you. The corporate scenario. The name of our domain, as well as the name of our company, is Wired BrainCoffee. And you'll see for domain controllers, I shorten that down to WBC. So I'll have one DC named WBC DC1. And I bet you can guess what the second one would be. Yep, WBC DC2. This is a large multi-site corporation. So some of my sites have 20 machines and some have 20,000 computers. My first domain controller that is running DNS and DHCP. And then I've got different types of clients, but at this point they're all running Windows 7. The servers are all running Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1. The network information on WBC DC1, that's my first domain controller that's also running DNS and DHCP. Its IP address is 10.10.10.50. We have a 24-bit subnet mask, 255.255.255.0, which, if you're not familiar with IP addresses, the subnet mask tells us out of that IP address which numbers belong to the network ID. Because our subnet mask takes 24 out of those 32 bits, that's the 255.255.255, that's showing me the first three numbers there are going to address the network ID. So our network ID here is 10.10.10. And then the actual IP address or the host ID for WBC DC1 is 50. Now check out WBC DC2. His IP address, it's the same network ID because they're on the same subnet. So the first three numbers are going to be the same, 10.10.10. And the last number is his host ID. That'll be 51. He also has a 24-bit subnet mask. Now, neither of these machines have a default gateway because I'd like to keep the traces as small as possible for getting started. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, our domain name is Wired BrainCoffee. I have, for our client-side machine, the name of it is the HR client machine. For IP address, he is set as a DHCP client, so whenever he boots up, he should get his IP information from the DHCP service running on WBC DC1. And you'll notice, as we start playing around with some of these basic network protocols like DHCP, I'm going to be putting DHCP on WBC DC2. I'm also going to break this machine so that he doesn't get an IP address from DHCP so that we can take a look at what happens with automatic private IP addressing or APIPA traffic. This guy is a member of the domain, Wired BrainCoffee, and we have Network Monitor already installed. I mentioned both of our server operating systems are running Server 2008 R2 SP1. They both have networking capabilities and at least 100 gigs of hard drive space available. They're both in the same Active Directory domain on a single subnet. And I am using the 180-day free trial version of all software here. You guys can probably download that from either MSDN or TechNet, depending on which one you subscribe to. The goals for my labs, probably the biggest complaint I hear from people about Network Monitor is it just looks like it's too difficult to learn. So what I want to do is I want to keep the labs simple enough to where they don't intimidate anybody. I don't want to sit down and show you a 20 meg trace for the first time and show you how to sift through it. That could take weeks. So what I want to do is just keep these labs simple, and then we're going to build on them, and then we're going to change behaviors of services on the network so that you can see what the data packets would actually look like. After you know some of these simple tips and tricks, you can take these into any size network trace on the planet. They work on everything. So, it's almost time to get started.